material here in a relatively short period of time. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here in just a second. Let me just get a couple things opened so that we'll be ready to rock. And there we go. Okay, just had to close out of things that might be popping up here while we're chatting. Okay, so as you know, this is interactive sessions, guys. In other words, as we go along here, if you have any questions, there's absolutely no such thing as a bad question. Okay, so you can ask your question either by typing into the chat box, or you can click to raise your hand, or if you're self-muted, you can just unmute your handset and chat with me verbally. Okay, so what I'm going to do here today, and what we're going to be doing here together, is we're going to start planning out your first marketing strategy for Facebook, and that means that we need to get some actual strategy going here and talk about some of the things that are going to be necessary for you to hit your goals as you go along. Because when we run that first ad, folks, results come quickly. And by quickly, I mean typically 9 times out of 10, your first leads come within the first hour of turning on your ad. Okay? So I want you guys to be prepared. We're going to be looking at it from a couple different angles as well that a lot of folks don't bother with, and that results in a lot of people getting out of the gates quickly and then ending up falling flat on their face wondering, you know, hey, why is this no longer working? Okay? So if you've ever tried Facebook ads before and you maybe got some results out of the gate and then it all just kind of died on the vine, we're going to cover why that's happening. Or if you've run ads before and just never got anything out of it really, we're going to cover that as well. Or if you just got crappy quality leads, we're going to cover that as well. It's what we do here today. What you do with what I show you today is going to dictate whether you fall in that category of being frustrated with your results or being absolutely stoked and excited, and now you're growing your business. Okay? So let's talk about step number one of what we need to do. Now, I have this form set up here just because I want to be able to jot down some notes here so that you can see what I'm popping in here, and it'll kind of help keep everything organized as to what needs to be done. I'm going to make these available to you in our project manager. After today, you're going to get a username and a password to log into our project management software so that we can all communicate together, and you can send private direct messages over to me instead of having to email and wait for a response. Okay, so you'll be getting those today as well. All right, so as we run our ad campaign, guys, there's a couple of things that we need to do. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to identify our target market. And when I say that we need to identify our target market, we really need to create what we call a customer avatar. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that terminology, but basically what that means is we need to talk specifically about who it is. And that means our age brackets. This could mean gender. This could mean income level. All right, now we're getting some feedback on one of the handsets there, so I'm just going to pause one. I'm just going to do a pause on all handsets, guys. My apologies, but we're getting some feedback through the microphone. So if you need to talk verbally, just click to raise your hand. I'll unmute it for you. Okay, but I just had to do an all handset mute because we were getting some feedback from the background. Okay, so I want you guys to really sit down and ask yourself these questions with your primary target. And there's a very important reason we do this, and that's because you can actually cut your costs on a Facebook ad in half or more by understanding this information. And I know oftentimes people think this is elementary and, oh, this is just a waste of time, this is boring, blah, blah, blah. But let me tell you guys, having run 7 figures worth of ads over the years, I'm telling you, this is a huge differentiator. Okay, because as we go through our ad settings, knowing the answers to these questions can really, really save you a lot of money. So who is it that you're targeting? When we create a customer profile or avatar, we really need to know what age brackets are doing loans with you. And oftentimes that means you might need to tap into your database and actually take a look. So I'll tell you this, about 80 to 90% of the time when loan officers tell me they know up front and they don't have to check it, when they check it, they come back and find out they're wrong. It's very, very rare for people to actually be correct on this. There's a lot of, information that we don't take into consideration, or there's a lot of guesswork involved. Guesswork doesn't pay the bills. So we need to take a look at our past closings. Even if you're just looking at the past 6 months or the past 12 months, who are the average age brackets? Unless we're talking reverse mortgages, which that one's obvious. We really do need to look at the numbers and actually tabulate them and calculate and find out what is the average. Okay, because advertising in the wrong age brackets can significantly increase your cost per click. Okay, so we need to be specific, and usually I like to narrow it down into about a 10 to 15 year range. Okay, now in a lot of the US, I'm finding that 32 is the minimum that I target when I'm running ads, and the high 40s is usually the highest age bracket I'll go after if I'm doing general purchase. But there are certain states and certain cities where we see big differentiators there in that age bracket, where maybe the average home buyer is significantly older, or in some cases significantly younger, and we need to make adjustments accordingly. The same applies to gender. Okay, let's not make assumptions here. I mentioned recently the whole VA loan experience with the loan officer who just assumed that the people doing VA loans in his area were male, and come to find out he was getting significantly cheaper clicks and conversion targeting females for VA home loans. He made an assumption, and he basically wasted his entire first 9 days of running ads paying way more than he should have because he made that assumption instead of checking the statistics. So we need to check gender as well. Now, it doesn't mean that we cut out the other gender. What it means is that we separate our ads and we run them separate. We'll run one group to male and one group to female, because sometimes we have to take a different approach to the different genders. Okay, it's just a fact of life. They don't always respond to the exact same ads the exact same way. Income level, again, check your past closings. Okay, where do they live? Let's narrow it down to, we can either narrow it down to zip or city, and then let's also do what's called negative targets. That means, are there specific zip codes or particular areas within the city that you don't want to run ads to? For example, if I told Facebook I want to run an ad in St. Louis, I know that about 75% of St. Louis is okay to target. But I also know that there are entire zip codes where the average loan amount is going to be $65,000, $70,000. Why would I spend my cost per click on doing a $65,000, $70,000 loan when my average loan amount is almost $300,000? So I'm going to do negative targets. Okay, so we tell Facebook, hey, run the ad here, 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 and here, but avoid running it here, 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 and here. You can even do target areas within that city itself. So make a list of areas that you really want to go after, and also on that list put if there are any areas within those cities or zip codes that you need to avoid, because you're just going to be wasting your clicks. Okay? All right. Okay, and then finally, what is your average prospect, your average client's experience? And what I mean by that is, are there any major life events or any major similarities between those groups of people that will help you target better? For example, let's talk about some major events. Baby on the way, recently married. We need to start thinking about what are some things that they might have in common that we can use to help us target. So for example, if we know that, let's say for example, our age bracket is 28, we look in our database and find out, hey, you know what, 85% of the people that I did a loan with last year were, parents, had children. Okay, well, knowing that would definitely impact the way that I market, even if it's something as simple as putting families, using pictures on my ads that have pictures of happy families in front of their new home and some young children in the pictures, because that's empathetic, right? People make decisions on an emotional level, and we make those emotional decisions based on how well we can relate to what we're seeing. When we see things that remind us of our own lives, we're more easily persuaded. Say, yeah, you know what? I really should be buying a house. You know what? I'm sick and tired of staying in this 900 square foot apartment. You know, we got 2 children. You know, we really should upgrade to a home. Maybe, yeah, it would be nice for them to have a yard to play in, et cetera, et cetera. Those types of connections happen on an emotional level. So if we can identify common similarities or a shared experience that is almost universal across your target market as far as who's doing loans with you, then you need to write it down on your sheet. Okay? So who are we targeting? What are their age brackets? What gender is it that you're primarily starting the process with up front? Income level. Where do they live? In other words, where's your audience? Where are you going to target them? And then are there any shared experiences or major life events that can help you? Does this make sense so far, guys? This exercise, again, is really going to make a difference for you, because when we create that first ad together, we're going to be taking all of this into consideration. So I want you guys to basically ask yourself these questions. So let me go ahead and put a separator here on my notes. Okay, now part two is so help me out here, guys. If you were asked right now and you had to give an answer almost instantly, what would you reply? What are the biggest concerns of your clients? When somebody comes to you for a home loan, what are their big concerns that they're asking you about? Or in other words, what questions do you run into more than others? Let's see. Go ahead and pop that in the chat box there. Let's see what we got here. What are the big concerns, the big problems, the things that are keeping them awake at night? Can't afford the payment? There we go. Is my credit good enough? There you go. That's excellent. Yeah, absolutely. So there's another one for credit issues. It's multiple for credit issues. Can't afford the payment. Down payment money? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So now let me go ahead and put these down here. So just as an example, so down payment. Yeah, who wants to dig into their pocket any more than they have to already? Because down payment, we can actually expand on it. And here's how detailed I want you to get, guys. We could just write down here down payment, or we could get really specific and say, well, down payment. But then my next question is why? And this is, again, a big, big, big exercise that most loan officers and most trainers don't tell you about. But this can really, really knock a home run out of the park, so to speak. Why is down payment a concern? It's one thing to just say, okay, yeah, they asked me about the down payment, but why? Why do they care? Well, because oftentimes they're going to have to spend a lot of money on things like landscaping, new furniture, right? Making modifications to their new home. Oftentimes, well, you know what? I need to paint my walls because I didn't like this. Oh, you know what? The carpet's getting old and a little dingy. I need to replace that carpet. Or, you know, they might find some windows need to be replaced. I mean, you never know what it is they're going to find. There's always those little surprises when you get into a new home. Even when you're buying a brand new home, there's usually those inevitable things that they didn't think about up front that they're going to have to spend money on. So there's lots and lots of things that they're going to end up spending money on. And if they have to dig into their pocket too much, it's really going to scare them away from being able to spend that money that they should be spending, right? So Yeah, so John said also there's a lot of people that still believe they need 20%. And isn't that crazy? I mean, how many times have they been educated, or do you run across ads and things telling people that, hey, you could even get down to, 2%, even 0% programs in a lot of states, and a lot of DPA programs and even grant programs out there. And there's still a huge percentage of the population that thinks they need 20%. So they're sitting there in an apartment wishing they could own a home, thinking they can't afford it, right? So down payment is a big concern. Credit issues. So again, why? Why do people ask you about credit? What is it about credit that's worrying them? Well, oftentimes ignorance has a negative connotation, but I'm not using it in a negative way here. It's just that they're ignorant of the facts. They don't really know, because how many times have you asked somebody what their credit was? I mean, my favorite answer as a loan officer was people would tell me, well, I think mine's a 37, or I think it's 80, and they would just give me these wild answers that just told me, hey, you know what? You probably don't know as much as you should about your credit score. So let's get a tri-merge going here and start doing some analyzing. So a lot of them are just ignorant of the facts. So there's also a lot of misinformation out there. So a lot of them are even getting bad advice from well-meaning friends and family. A lot of them are loaded up on debt, as I just saw come over the responses there, and so they're kind of worried. It's like, hey, you know what, I know I got probably more debt than I should have, and I'm a little worried that there's not going to be room. There are some of them that just know they've missed payments. They know going in. So they're worried because they know they haven't done the best by their credit. Maybe they missed payments, or what I used to run into a lot was where people that were assumed that if they were a single day late on making a payment, that would report to their credit. So a lot of people would tell me, oh yeah, I've missed a ton of payments, or I've been late on a lot of my payments, so I'm sure my credit sucks, and I pull and to be in the mid to high 700s, and I'd say, well, you realize unless you're 30 days late, it's not reporting to your credit. In most cases. So a lot of them, again, are just misinformed. So there's a lot of credit issue concerns out there. We could go on and on. So a lot of them have student loans that have to be repaid. Yes, absolutely, John. So lots and lots of great responses here. But again, we can't just go with the response. We need to put down a why, because that why can oftentimes make it into your ad. And I'll explain that as we go through making actual ads, just how powerful this is. But what we're doing is we're tapping into the human side of things. Because when we run ads on Facebook, we can't just appear robotic in like your typical advertiser. Instead, we really, really want people to look at your ads and say, wow, that's me. I see myself in this ad. So we're more conversational. We chat more about real human problems, as opposed to just, now's a wonderful time to refinance, or now's a great time to buy a home, blah, blah, blah. No, instead it's, hey, is this keeping you up at night? Are you worried that you're going to have to dig into your pocket for a 20% down payment? There's not going to be any money left over for your furniture. How are you going to do your landscaping? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? Well, let me share a couple things with you that you might not know. Okay, now that's going to stop me in my tracks. I'm going to check it out, because it's tapping into this pain, these concerns that are keeping me awake at night. Okay, so as we complete this step, now we need to ask ourselves, all right, so here's our next three questions. Let's start with this top one. So once I've identified what's keeping them awake at night, what their big issues are, Now I want to ask myself, oops, sorry about that. I did not mean to delete the separator. There we go. Now I want to ask myself, what is the misinformation that they're hearing and seeing? This is for whistleblower ads. And whistleblower ads are when you get to run an ad that clears up all this misinformation, something that's really, really popular in the market that a lot of people believe. When people see something that completely challenges something that they've long held to be true, something that they believed, and when they learn it's not true, there's the holy cow factor. Like, wow, holy cow, I've always thought that I needed 20% down, or holy cow, I always thought my credit, blah, blah, blah. I had no clue that this is just completely wrong. Wow. Well, guess what? Now you, by default, because you were the whistleblower, you're just that much more trusted. And you've introduced doubt in their own understanding of things. And that's always a wonderful thing, especially when you get a lot of borrowers that think they already know a whole lot. And how often is that true? How often is that the case, that you get very, very well-informed borrowers? You usually know they're filled with a bunch of misinformation, but they think they know more than they really do. And sometimes that can be obnoxious when going through the loan process and actually be a barrier, because they'll make poor decisions based on this incorrect information. So when you get to be the one that clears things up, by default, you're that much more trustworthy. You've earned a level of trust that your competition has not yet. So what misinformation is really, really common out there in the marketplace for the person that you basically outlined up here? So we take your avatar, this ideal prospect or common prospect that you kind of profiled up here, and now we come down and say, okay, if I'm that person, what is it that I'm seeing out in the marketplace? What bad information? What misinformation am I seeing? So now we fill this out because we're going to address this when we run the ad, right? And it's not just, now up here is just general misinformation. So this could just be, you know, publicly available information. But now we're going to do, what are the bad lenders telling them? In other words, we've all run into the unscrupulous lenders out there, or the lenders that use questionable advertising, right? Can you guys give me some examples of questionable marketing and practices, messages being pushed by kind of the bad guys, so to speak, the guys who will just do and say anything to get a lead? What sort of information might or techniques might we be running across here, or might the borrower be running across that we need to contend with? What are some of those questionable practices? Okay, I'm refreshing, and yep, there we go. Yep, those quoting unbelievable interest rates. Yep, there we go. So let's put that down. So how many times have you gotten somebody, hey, yeah, you know what, I want a 2% or blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, I saw it in the paper this morning, right? So that still happens. It's not supposed to, but it does still happen, where interest rates are being quoted just absolutely unrealistic rates and half-truths. So what else? What else might the bad guys be doing, so to speak? What else might our prospects be running into that might be confusing or misrepresenting to the borrowers, to somebody that's looking to buy a home? Or some other practices? So we know in the past that there were a lot of questionable loan structures being pushed, right? We got unbelievable rates. We got guys promising, there we go, that they know aren't available. Okay, so they're giving half truths, half stories, telling, yeah, you can get this, this, and that. So yeah, absolutely. So here's one. It's okay to buy the $70,000 or get the $7,000 vehicle loan before you buy your house. No problem. So that's coming from the bankers. So again, that's just terrible advice. So so yeah, absolutely. Okay, give me just a second here. I'm hearing some feedback in the system again. Okay. So sometimes it actually helps to go and take a look at some of the competing, loan ads and things along those lines and mortgage websites just to see what's being said to these folks. So you can help you with this section, because this is extremely, extremely powerful right here when you get to, again, be the whistleblower and let them know, hey, you know what, here's the whole truth of what's happening. Okay, so we talked about the bad lenders, the guys that are willing to do and say anything, and now just what is the run-of-the-mill competition doing? So I know this sounds a little bit like the previous step, but these aren't necessarily the bad guys, they're just the competition. So what message, in other words, what approach and angles? So what I want you to do here is actually write down the ad, or maybe even link to it, or take a screenshot of it and paste it into the page. We want you to have examples of what the competition is saying. So actually write down the text being used in the ad, because you don't want to go down the exact same path that your competition does. We don't want to be Me Too marketers here. So the best way to avoid being a Me Too marketer is to first take a look. Well, what is my competition advertising? What's their call to action? What are they using as a differentiator? Because I don't want to end up being the same as them, right? So once you filled this out, okay, here we go. So, all right. So yeah, absolutely. So I have a competitor offering a 1% down conventional loan. So yeah, these are the types of things you want to put down in here. What are your competition offering? This is how we find holes in the market. This is how we find opportunities, because a hole is an opportunity, right? If something is not being targeted properly or is underrepresented in your market, there could be entire sub-niches that you can target with almost free reign, with almost zero competition. But the only way to find that is if we have a pretty good understanding of what the competition is saying. What kind of ads are they running, and so forth. Does that make sense? So this is our exercise. Now, our final steps. So this is the end of the primary exercise, but there is one additional step here, and that is so number one. Now we ask ourselves our final questions, and that is, okay, now that I've outlined all of this information, now I have to ask myself as a marketer, and I need to be completely honest with myself. When I come up here and I look at what are these big concerns and who are my target market, what misinformation are they seeing and hearing? Okay, well, how do you address this? How do you address this? We want a detailed answer here. It doesn't just have to be a single answer. It could be multiple. What pops in your head as to, well, what could I do to, for example, put their fears at rest? If these things are really concerning them and keeping them up at night, what could I do or say to help address this? And it doesn't need to be overly complex or complicated, folks. Let me give you an example. Okay, a very popular ad is we offer a quiz. And that means that we start off by addressing a particular problem. So, hey, home buyers, if you're in the St. Louis area, so I'm addressing a particular group of people. You already know that buying a home can be extremely expensive. Did you know that 7 out of 10 home buyers still believe that they need to have a 20% down payment in order to buy a home right here in St. Louis? This is not true. And in many cases, you can get or qualify for extremely low down payment, and in some cases, no down payment home loans. But to find out if you qualify for these programs, click here to take this mini quiz that will show you an instant answer. So it's just a mini quiz. It's a little quiz that asks them some questions. It's interactive. It tabulates the results and spits back an answer and captures their information. Okay, so I'm addressing their concern by giving them an interactive tool that they can fill out and engage with and get a quick answer. This is just one of many, many, many possibilities I'm just throwing out there, but brainstorm, how can I address their concerns? How can I make them feel better? Okay. So now we go up to some misinformation. So now, how can I get them the proper information so that I am viewed as the trusted expert? So in other words, now we're moving on to the misinformation. So you put down, here's their misinformation, here's what bad lenders are saying to them, and all this can be confusing and frustrating and send them down the wrong path. Okay, so now how can I get them the proper information? Am I going to offer them a downloadable white paper? Am I going to offer them, free answers via email? Am I going to try to schedule a phone call? Am I going to do a webinar? I mean, how are you going to get information to them? A downloadable e-guide, PDF document, Word document? What? How do I get them the proper information so that I'm viewed as the trusted expert? Now this is probably hands down the most difficult question most loan officers have to ask. Whenever I ask this question, this is the one that seems to stump most folks, where they really, really have to sit down and think about it for a while. And I'm not saying that's everyone, but it can be a toughie because oftentimes we view our niche as kind of commoditized, right? I mean, across the industry, really, aren't 98, 99% of loan officers getting their loans from the same place, offering the same cash of programs, right? So a lot of loan officers do find it difficult to answer this question. There's nothing wrong with that. There's only something wrong with it if you don't do something about it, if you don't answer it anyways. If you're having trouble with that, then maybe we should chat. But really, what makes you the obvious choice? What do you bring to the table as a loan officer that's going to be better off for the client? And we need to answer this question. The rest of what we do on your first groupings of ads will be based on your answers to these questions. All right. So expectations here, guys, are to fill this out and If you want my critique of it, just shoot it on over to me. I'm more than happy to review your answers here because this is going to turn into a framework for you. But it does need to be completed first. So if this can be completed and sent over to me, then boom, you're ready for the next step, which is, okay, let's go ahead and get ad number 1 put together. But first, I want you to have this solid foundation by answering these tough questions. All right, does this make sense? Any questions on the questions? And again, yes, I'm going to make this these questions available to you. Today, you will actually get your logins, and you'll be able to log in and download. Okay? All right, folks. So I'm really excited to see your answers to these questions, and please don't just breeze through and rush through thinking that this is unimportant, because we're going to be circling back to this repeatedly as you go through some of your marketing stages here with your ads. And I may, as I look through the answers, I may contact you and say, hey, I got some questions here, or whatever. I may not. But ultimately, this is going to serve as a very helpful sneak peek and foundation into the proper way to build out your ads campaign. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, give me just a moment here, folks. I'm not disappearing. I'm just scrolling through some of the questions here, making sure that I did get to the bulk of the questions. Okay. All right, good, good. Almost done, and okay, perfect. There we go. Okay. So let's just circle back to the beginning. We're identifying our target. What are the big concerns? What misinformation are they hearing and seeing? What are the bad lenders saying to them? What message is the competition sending? That's our starting point. And we got the rest of the questions here for the extended faction. Okay, Pete. Yeah, Peter, you can put your answers directly into the Word document. So yeah, it's completely editable when I send it over. Okay. So you just simply check where you want to type, begin typing. That's it. So if you need this sheet sent over, I will send it over. However, you will get a link to Glip here today. So when you log into glip.com, you will indeed be able to download. Let me pull up Glip and show you guys what I'm talking about when I say Glip. Okay, there we go. So I'm actually logged into the members area here of Glip, and as you can see, it's almost like a Facebook news feed here. All the conversations with other members and questions, comments, and assignments all feed directly into the main area here. Over to the right, you're going to find downloadable links and things that have been shared with other members. And sending a message to someone is as simple as clicking on their name and picture. And this will actually pop open an option to send a direct message. So that's what makes it easy, is we completely bypass email there. All right. So it's nice and easy. Yeah, see how you can just keep on scrolling back and communicating with the members and all that fun stuff. It's a really, really cool system. And there's nothing wrong with communicating with the other members, guys. Feel free to start conversations, ask questions, interact, hold each other's feet to the fire, all that fun stuff, because that's what this is all about. Okay? Awesome. Awesome. Okay, guys. So this will be enough to get you going. Well, as soon as I get this back from each of you, then we'll be ready to go ahead and schedule our next session and move on to running your very first ad. But I want you to set your first guidelines here. Build this foundation by actually answering these questions, and then we can move to our next step. Okay? So if any questions pop up in the meantime, feel free to send me a message, give me a jingle. Be more than happy to help out. And make sure that you answer the questions and put them into the document that I provide. All right, from there, I look forward to taking the next step with you guys. We're going to move very, very rapidly once we get this portion taken care of. Okay, guys. Yes, I did indeed record it. So I'm